Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little colder and a whole lot tougher. A winter in the Middle Ages. Forget the pretty castles covered in snow and brave knights riding through snowy fields. The real story? You probably wouldn't make it through even one morning. So if you're sitting somewhere warm, take a second to hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now turn the lights down. Maybe turn on a fan for that chilly vibe, and let's travel back to the year 1325. You wake up freezing on your straw mattress. It's not cozy, it's full of bugs and smells awful because it used to be in a barn. Fleas are everywhere, and they don't care that you're trying to sleep. Your blanket is made of old wool, soaked with last year's sweat and grime. It's heavy, itchy, and smells like a dirty farm. No fluffy pillows either. Just a rough lump of fabric you've had for years. You sit up and your body cracks and groans. You're 22, but in this time period, that's already considered old. Your knees pop and your back aches. You step onto the freezing floor, and it feels like ice is crawling up your legs. Every breath you take feels like tiny needles in your lungs. There's no heater, no warm air, just the freezing wind sneaking in through the cracks. As your eyes open fully, you see you're not alone. Your parents, your brothers and sisters, and even that cousin who never left are all sleeping right next to you. The house is one room, made of wood and mud. Gaps in the walls let in the cold wind. There's no such thing as personal space. Even your pig sleeps inside with you to stay warm. Add in your neighbor's chickens making noise above you, and you've got a very loud, very smelly way to wake up. The church bell rings, echoing through the cold. That's your alarm clock. No snooze button here. If you don't get up, your landlord, the lord who owns your land, might send someone to remind you that you owe money or food. So you drag yourself up. You walk outside. The snow is heavy on your roof, and your front door is swollen from the wet and cold. A strong wind hits you in the face, and snowflakes sting like tiny knives. You wrap your thin cloak tighter, but it doesn't help much. You wear rough wool pants and a tunic, but your underclothes are just thin linen, barely warmer than nothing. Your first job of the day is finding water that isn't frozen. The village well is covered in ice, so you and your neighbors take turns breaking it open with an axe. The water is dirty and full of leaves or other junk, but it's all you have to drink. Then it's time for breakfast. But don't think pancakes or cereal. You get a thin soup made from oats or barley. You cook it over a smoky fire that burns your eyes. There's no sugar, no milk, nothing tasty. If you're lucky, you might have a piece of salty meat or some old cheese. Usually, it's just the plain mush. It doesn't taste good, but you eat it anyway because being hungry all the time is normal. After that, it's time to work. Maybe you're chopping firewood, carrying heavy water buckets, or feeding animals that are barely alive. If you have a trade, like making barrels or working metal, you head through the snow to your shop. Your breath makes clouds in the cold air. Everything takes longer when your fingers are stiff and your boots are soaked. By noon, the wind gets worse. Snow blows into your face and feels like tiny bits of glass. You try to hide behind walls or fences, but you can't avoid the cold forever. Clothes in the Middle Ages weren't great at keeping people warm. Fur was expensive, and most people only had a shirt and a tunic. No waterproof coats, no warm gloves. Just whatever they could find or make, and once it got wet, it stayed wet. When you finally get home, you're freezing and soaked with sweat from working so hard. Your fingers and toes might be going numb. There's no hot shower waiting for you. You stand by the fire and rub your hands together, hoping to feel something again. But be careful, get too close to the flames, and your clothes might catch fire. That happens more often than you'd think. It gets dark early in the winter, sometimes after only 8 hours of daylight. Your only fun at night is listening to someone tell stories. But candles don't last long. Wax is valuable, so you sometimes use rushlights, dried plants soaked in animal fat. They give off smoke and barely any light. You sit in the smoky dark listening to tales of saints, monsters, and magic. And you try not to cough. If you do, someone might think you're cursed or sick, and that could bring trouble from the local priest, who might say you're being punished by God or worse. And that's just one winter day in the Middle Ages. No heat, no plumbing, barely any food, and you're expected to get through it like it's normal. Because back then it was. You were just trying to survive until tomorrow. Soon after night falls, you realize that this winter has a secret weapon: darkness. Without streetlights or lanterns on every corner, the village turns pitch black. If you venture outside, you could trip on a snow-covered stone or come face to face with a wandering pig. Inside, the only light comes from the dying embers in your hearth and the few rushlights left. Every shadow dances, and shapes on the walls look like monsters. You might tell yourself it's just your imagination, but in the Middle Ages, fear isn't easily dismissed. Around the hearth, you sit on a wooden bench and unwrap your thin dinner, usually a piece of hard bread dipped in cold broth, or maybe some leftover porridge. If you're lucky, you've traded work for a bit of cheese or a small hunk of salted fish. But most nights, it's meager rations. While you eat, you listen to your older sibling recount rumors. The Lord's men are out collecting taxes in the next parish. A hunter spotted wolves near the wood. Someone's child is sick with a cough that might be more serious than just a cold. Bad news travels fast, and in winter, bad news can be life or death. After dinner, chores call again. You fetch another bucket of water to rinse the cooking pot, water that's nearly frozen by the time it reaches your hands. You bother the animals, making sure they have just enough hay to keep their small bodies from freezing solid. If the snow is too deep, you carve a small path to the pig's pen or the henhouse. One misstep could leave you sinking into drifts up to your waist. Every movement requires effort you never knew you had until your muscles scream with exhaustion. By bedtime, you're bone tired, but your work isn't done. You try to prepare for tomorrow, stacking more firewood as close to the hearth as possible, filling any gaps in your door with straw or cloth, and inspecting your boots for holes where the cold wind might sneak in. Maybe you cut a few branches to make rustic coverings for your hut's windows. Yes, windows exist, but they're just small holes patched with oiled cloth to keep out wind and rain. The cloth tears easily and barely stops the cold. You finally crawl back into your bed of straw, covering yourself with the same wool blanket that's been your companion for months. Fleas jump back onto your skin like clockwork, no respect for bedtime. You close your eyes and listen to the wind batter your roof, hoping it holds until morning. You dream of fireplaces, thick blankets, and hot baths, things not yet invented for people like you. The next morning, your routine repeats. You wake up cold, you break ice for water, you eat bland gruel, and you work until your body aches. Day after day, the same cycle. But winter brings surprises. An outbreak of illness is always lurking. Coughs become serious quickly when everyone lives packed together in cramped huts. If you fall sick, there's no doctor with medicine, just a wise woman who might offer herbs that sometimes help, sometimes kill you. Many nights you hear someone in a nearby home coughing so hard they can't breathe. Sometimes at dawn, their house is quiet, and they're gone. No funeral, no priest, just a hole in the circle at the hearth. By midwinter, food stores start dwindling. You've already made that barter: a few eggs for a handful of flour, a bit of wool for some salt. But now the wheat sacks are nearly empty, and the pigs have already been slaughtered for meat. The prince might send someone to requisition your last chickens or that stubborn goat who gives the one slow drip of milk each morning. Once that's gone, your neighbor's dogs are your family's only two hens with hungry interest. Every bite of food tastes sweeter because it means less for tomorrow. You watch your fellow villagers, trying to stay hopeful. You bicker over the smallest comforts: who gets the thicker blanket tonight, who sits closer to the hearth, who gets the last piece of stale bread. Arguments flare up faster when you're cold and tired. Sometimes you see the Lord's soldiers passing by, their faces set and their horses breathing white puffs into the morning air. They don't stop for you. Their business is with your lord, and your lord's business is taxing your family. And still you survive. Day turns into week, week into month. The sun rises and sets in the same predictable rhythm, but time stretches. Every day you endure the cold, the hunger, the danger. You feel blood in your veins and warmth in your stubborn heart. Because if you lose hope, you die sooner. By the time spring shows the faintest hint of a thaw, muddied ground, trickle of water under your door, you've lived through months of hardship. Your fingers and toes might never fully become their own again. Your back and knees ache like old wood. But you've survived. And that, in the harsh truth of medieval winter, is victory. So, would you last through a medieval winter? Probably not. But now you know why living in those times takes more than courage. It takes stubbornness, sheer grit, and the ability to find tiny victories in the cold. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the past, smash that like button, subscribe for more, and let me know in the comments what part of this brutal winter caught your attention. Until next time, stay warm, both in body and spirit. Winter drags on, and by now you've settled into a harsh routine that feels like a slow march toward an unknown finish line. Your body has adapted in some ways, your skin toughened by the wind, your lungs used to icy air, but your spirit wavers on days when hunger and cold seem unbeatable. You move like a machine, waking each morning to the same frozen floor, the same bitter wind, the same bitter gruel. Yet each morning you wake, you remind yourself that snow doesn't last forever, even if it feels like it. As the sun inches higher in the sky, it still barely warms you. Its weak light gleams off frozen fields and icicles hanging from every roof. On some days, the sky is pale gray, drizzling sleet that freezes on contact, turning roads into skating rinks. You learn to keep your feet wide apart and shuffle like an old man to avoid falling. If you slip, you risk spraining an ankle. No physician for that. Only the careful knotting of cloth around your leg and more days of hobbling through chores. Food has become a memory you taste in your dreams. Each morning, you calculate how much porridge you can spare to mix with water so it lasts until midday. Barley, oats, or any grain you have gets turned into a thin broth. Once in a while, you find a small cache of nuts or dried berries traded for your labor, something sweet and fatty that melts on your tongue and reminds you of summers past. But those treats vanish in a day. The pigs, goats, and chickens long since given to the potmean meat is a legend, not a meal. Evening gatherings around the fire are more subdued now. Conversations focus on the rituals that give hope. You hear about Candlemas, when villagers carry candles into the church to bless the light, praying for the sun to return. Some recite old songs passed down by elders, melodies about frost melting under spring's touch. Melodies that rub up against your heart, reminding you that better days might come. Singing warms your throat against the cold, even if your toes stay numb. Illness is still the shadow that lurks behind every cough. You have seen neighbors vanish overnight, leaving their doors sealed with a hastily scrawled cross. The wise woman moves quietly from hut to hut, clutching bundles of herbs, wild garlic, yarrow, and elderflower. You trust her, or at least you trust her more than nothing. Her poultices sometimes ease fevers, her teas sometimes ease coughs. But when she kneels by a dying child and shakes her head, you know there is no more to be done. A hush falls over the village that lasts longer than the winter night. Transportation grinds to a halt. Roads are buried under drifts that reach the height of your waist. You can't take a cart into town to trade or buy supplies. When you must travel, you use snowshoes, simple wooden frames with rawhide lacing. They keep you from sinking, but they're awkward. You tire easily, and muscles you never knew you had ache from lifting your feet high with each step. Even traveling a mile becomes a half-day's journey. Trade with neighboring villages becomes a game of negotiation and risk. Some days you see traders with wagons pulled by horses wrapped in blankets, moving slowly through fields that look like white deserts. They bring basics, salt, cloth, and the rare luxury of sugar. You exchange wool for salt, salted fish for cloth. Salt preserves food and stings your wounds, but without it, meat spoils in days. Cloth stitches holes in your clothes and patches your blankets. But trade costs you what little you have, and you wonder if one day you'll have nothing left to offer. Your mental strength is tested more than your body. Solitude in the fields makes your mind wander to dark places. You recall a summer picnic by a river, the laughter of friends, the scent of wildflowers. Those memories feel like a lifetime away. You learn to fight despair by focusing on small tasks, stacking one log at a time, splitting one handful of kindling at a time, carrying one frozen bucket of water at a time. Think small, survive small, and you survive. Religion and superstition blend powerfully now. In the darkest hours before dawn, villagers walk to the local chapel to light candles and pray for mercy. You might join them, your breath visible as you quietly repeat a prayer. You don't know if your words matter, but silence together binds you. You feel less alone when you see your neighbors' pale faces illuminated by candlelight. Once, a trader from the coast arrived, carrying news of harvests down south, grapes, figs, and warmer air. He spoke of markets bustling with fish and grain. You listened in awe, picturing distant lands where snow never stays. His stories planted seeds of longing. You felt both envy and hope, envy for those lucky souls and hope that you, too, might see spring's promise. As February ends, you notice subtle changes. The snow softens underfoot. Running water trickles under ice at the stream, singing a quiet song. The wind feels less cruel, carrying the faint smell of mud. You catch yourself smiling at the sky's pale blue. Your heart pounds as you realize winter will end. But the thaw brings new challenges. Melting snow means mud so deep that your boots get sucked off in the fields. You balance on logs or shove a board into the muck to avoid disappearing knee-deep. The chills return. Once wet, you freeze faster. Every chore risks soaking you and making you ill. You change as quickly as you can, but your underclothes stay damp for days. The river swells, flooding low paths and rushing past your door. You barricade wooden planks to keep water out of your hut. You check your stored grain sacks, ensuring they sit on raised pallets. Mice and rats get desperate and try to gnaw through sacks. You set traps or chase them away with a flaming stick, trying not to worry about disease. Church bells ring in celebration when the first daffodils bloom, though that might be an exaggeration. Still, villagers plant onion sets and pea seeds in any patch of dirt they find. You and your family scrape at the soil around the hut, burying seeds that hopefully sprout before the next winter. Each seed is a gamble, but also a promise. Then, one morning, you wake up to birdsong, a sound you had forgotten. A robin hops near your door, pecking at melted patches. You bracket on your thickest cloak and step outside, feeling sun on your face for the first time in months. Tears sting your eyes, not from cold, but from relief. You breathe deeply, tasting the air. The rest of the day passes in a blur of activity. You help neighbors clear snow, repair roofs, fix broken fences. You trade one onion sprig for 3 pea seeds. You share a piece of cheese someone finally got from a traveling merchant. You talk about dreams for summer gardens, for fresh milk, for washing clothes in warm water. By midday, you're tired but alive. You sit on a stump in a muddy field and let the sun warm your back. You realize how precious warmth is. You vow to store more wood next winter, to gather extra furs if you can, and to learn a better way to seal your hut's walls. As dusk falls, you light a proper fire and roast a small barrel of nuts over the embers. The crackle sounds loud after months of sickening quiet. You taste the nuts, rich and oily, and laugh out loud. The sound echoes between log walls, a strange music of joy. That night, the blanket on your bed feels lighter. The fleas still jump, but you hardly notice. You close your eyes to the wind's lullaby, dreaming of green fields, cool streams, and a life where snow is optional. Spring has truly arrived, and the challenge shifts from battling cold and snow to fighting mud and new threats. You wake on a morning when sunlight streams in through your patched windows, bringing warmth you haven't felt in months. But inside, the floor is a sloppy mess of melting snow and dirt. You step carefully, lifting your foot high as you move to avoid sinking into ankle-deep mud. The same tracks you mapped in winter are now rivers, and every step is a gamble. Your first task is to clear a path. You and your family drag logs and planks outside and lay them like makeshift boardwalks from the door to the well in the henhouse. Each plank weighs a ton when wet, and lifting them means aching shoulders and backs. But as you work, you feel something like excitement. This mud will dry, and soon green will replace white. Next, you turn to your seeds. During winter, you saved seeds from last harvest, peas, beans, onion sets, and a precious handful of grain. You march to the edge of your plot and shove a hoe into the softened earth. The soil yields easily now that frost has melted. You break up clods, smoothing the ground with the back of your hoe until it's ready to accept seeds. Each small hole you make is a promise for food in the coming months. Planting is quiet work, but your mind races. You press each seed gently into its spot, cover it with soil, and pat down the earth with your boot. You space them carefully because crowded seeds won't grow well. You imagine rows of green shoots pushing through dirt, and for a moment, you think about how quickly grass grows in the city fields compared to the slow pace of medieval farms. After planting, you haul water like before, only this time it's liquid gold. You soak the ground around your newly planted seeds, but you don't drown them. You learn quickly that too much water washes seeds away or causes them to rot. Too little water means they die. It's a delicate balance, and you feel like an alchemist every time you fill your bucket and pour water drop by drop. On your way back, you pass neighbors doing the same. People wave at each other with muddy hands and tired smiles. There's relief in shared work. You talk about what to plant next, who has extra seed, and where the local market fair will be held. The Lord decreed that travelers can come safely now that roads are clear, and merchants will pass through bringing salt, cloth, and maybe fresh fruit from the south. The thought of oranges or grapes feels like a fairy tale, but it fuels your hope. By midday, the sun is strong enough that some frost still lingers in low spots, but the air feels warm on your face. You shed your cloak and let it dry over a fence. Inside your shirt, you sweat slightly as you haul more wood for a midday cooking fire. You prepare a stew of potatoes, onions, and the one chunk of salted pork you've rationed since winter. The smell is heavenly. Every flavor bursts in your mouth, and you close your eyes to savor it. Afternoon tasks include repairing your hut. Winter took its toll. Roof thatch is loose, gaps in walls have widened, and the door sags again. You kneel outside, weaving new thatch alongside old, binding it tightly and hammering small wooden pegs to hold bundles in place. You thank yourself for saving extra reeds last fall. Each bundle you tie down feels like one less leak when rain comes. You patch cracks in the walls with clay mixed with straw. It's messy work, but satisfying to see the cracks close. When work is done, you head to the well where you meet the village children, who skip and shout in the sun. Their laughter surprises you. You haven't heard such joy for months. You give them a nod, and one runs by to show you a frog she caught. You smile and let her have it. They need reminders that life continues, no matter how hard the winter was. As dusk approaches, you gather around the hearth once more, but tonight is different. You light candles without hesitation, the room glowing with warm light. Families share bread and cheese brought by traveling merchants. A stranger has arrived with news. Next week there will be a market day in the nearby town. You can trade surplus eggs or wool for cloth and salt. Plans swirl in your head, what you might trade, what you need to buy. Night falls late, and you step outside just to stand in the moonlight. The ground is firm, the air is mild, and you can see stars you forgot existed behind winter's gray clouds. You breathe deeply, tasting freedom and possibility. Back inside, you slip into bed on your straw mattress, now a little drier thanks to your repairs and fewer bugs because you shook them out over winter. Your blanket still smells faintly of old wool, but it's lighter and almost warm. You close your eyes and feel genuine comfort for the first time in months. You think back on the cold mornings, the brittle nights, the hunger and disease that almost broke you. But here you are, standing on solid ground, planting hope, and facing a future that feels yours to shape. You've earned every drop of comfort, and you know how fragile it is. So, would you last through a medieval winter and see spring like this? Probably not without grit, resourcefulness, and a little luck. But for a moment, you get to bask in your own hard-won triumph. If this journey through snow, mud, and new green inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know in the comments what you'd grow first if you were living in 1325. Until next time, stay curious and keep surviving and thriving in your own world. Spring's thaw brings more than melting ice. It brings a rush of tasks that decide whether you survive the next winter. After a few days of warmer weather, you and your neighbors organize a village work day. Everyone brings tools, hoes, axes, shovels, and you gather at the communal barn. The roof needs repair before the next rain, and fences around the fields must be strengthened. It's labor that requires coordination. One family holds a beam while another drives a peg, a group hauls bundles of thatch, and children carry small stones to fill holes in the walls. For the first time in months, you feel part of something larger than just survival. There's a proud hum in the chatter, a sense that by working together, you push back against hardship. With building projects underway, you steal moments to explore spring's surprises. Wildflowers peek through the broken ground, and you spot green shoots poking up in the field you planted. You trace their progress each morning, feeling excitement as a leaf unfurls. Around the village pond, frogs croak a constant welcome. You watch tadpoles dart under the water's surface, marveling at how life returns after months of ice. Back in winter, such signs would be a legend told near the hearth. Now, they're proof that nature's cycle repeats, no matter how cruel the cold. Food gathering shifts from desperation to opportunity. You harvest early greens, wild onions, nettles, and dandelion leaves, cooking them into a stew that tastes faintly like hope. You preserve handfuls in salt or dry them to extend their shelf life. Your family's grain stocks are already low, so you collect acorns ground into meal for a nutty porridge, sharing the task with the older women. In the afternoons, you forage for wild berries along the edge of the wood, strawberries, raspberries, and the occasional wild cherry. Each sweet bite reminds you of warmth, sunlight, and the absent flavors of spring. As repairs finish and fields take shape, a traveling peddler arrives on a cart painted bright with crude symbols. He carries bits of metal, colored cloth, and strange trinkets, small mirrors, metal combs, and beads that catch the sun. You trade wool scraps for a piece of cloth with a bold pattern, imagining a new tunic for the next season. Others get small wooden toys for their children or cooking knives that fit better in the hand. These little luxuries feel like treasures, moments when life seems more than survival. You tuck your cloth under your cloak, planning to stitch it into something special. School is a privilege for few, but knowledge spreads in whispers. You learn from the local scribe, who comes once a week to the chapel to teach children the basics of reading and prayer. You sneak in at the back, tracing letters in the dirt with a stick when no one watches. Words feel magical. Once, you couldn't imagine letters moving across a page. Now you see your name written, and it feels strange to know that your identity can become marks on parchment. Literacy might bring you opportunities beyond your village someday. It's not all hope and laughter. New threats appear with the thaw. Wolves driven by hunger slip closer to the edge of town, and you find half-eaten livestock in the fields. You join a patrol led by the village guard, mostly farmers armed with spears, walking a circuit at dusk. The wolves are smart. They circle at a distance and retreat when torches appear. Still, the fear sharpens senses. You learn to sleep with your boots by the bed in case you must run or prepare to fight, a reminder that survival demands constant vigilance. Rain returns with the warming weather, and soon the ground turns heavy and sticky. Rain seeps through the thatch in places you missed, so you wake to damp spots on the floor. You hurry to bucket out water and spread straw under leaks, praying your temporary fixes hold until you can rehatch again. Mud-drenched boots line the doorway, and every step inside carries grit and dampness. You curse those droplets falling from cracked beams, but you also know that rain fills wells and nourishes fields, so you accept it as part of the cycle. Village gatherings become celebrations when a neighboring lord allows a midsummer fair on the green. For that day, the farrier sets up a forge to shoe horses, the baker bakes extra loaves, and women dye cloth with plant pigments. You wash your face with cool water from the stream, braid your hair in a loose plait, and wear your best linen shirt. The fair pulls traders, musicians, and storytellers. You watch acrobats twist and flip, then listen to minstrels singing ballads of heroes and distant battles. Even if you can't join the dance, you tap your foot to the lute's rhythm and feel your chest lighten. The fair also brings news of the wider world, talk of wars in France, a new king crowned in England, and rumors of a plague still lingering in cities far south. The serious ones join the town crier as he reads proclamations written on parchment, orders to guard against disease, to pay taxes on certain goods, to prepare defenses if war comes. You listen, feeling both small and connected. Your life is shaped by decisions you'll never fully understand, yet those decisions reach you in this simple village. With each passing week, the seeds you planted sprout and grow. Tiny green vines of peas climb stakes you set in neat rows. Onion sprouts stand tall like green blades in the soft earth. You pull the first radish of the season, its bright pink bulb a surprise under the dirt. Friends and family celebrate with a simple feast, radish dipped in salt, a slice of cheese, and a cup of watered-down wine passed around. You raise your cup and sip, the wine's warmth reminding you of life's pleasures, small as they are. Despite the fare and feasts, planning for winter never stops. You store extra vegetables in clay jars, seal them with cloth and fat to keep out air and pests. You weave straw mats to cover floors and windows, hoping to keep cold out once frost returns. Old villagers teach younger ones to collect bark and moss to pack into cracks, creating insulation that might save lives when snow falls again. As summer moves toward fall, you feel time speeding up. Harvest comes, a whirlwind of cutting, carrying, threshing, and winnowing. You help stack grain sheaves in the barn, sleep less, eat more, and feel pride in every crow of a rooster. When winter comes back, you will face it with fuller stores, shielded windows, and stronger spirits. You know the cold will come again, but you feel ready. Sitting by the hearth one evening, you think back to that first freezing morning when you crawled out of bed with fleas biting and no idea how to survive. You remember the emptiness of hunger and the terror of illness. And you remember hope's small sparks, splash of green in the snow, firelight in a stranger's lantern, laugh of a child chasing frogs in spring. Those moments kept you going. In the end, surviving a medieval winter is not just about warmth or food. It's about community, neighbors sharing blankets, peddlers offering trinkets, prayers shared in candlelit chapels. It's about stubbornness, refusing to give up when every bone aches. It's about adaptation, learning the patterns of seasons, the value of each seed, and the power of shared effort. So here's the conclusion: a medieval winter is more than a season, it's a test of humanity. It asks you to rely on each other, to find resilience in small joys, and to refuse defeat. And when spring finally breaks, dripping water on hardened ground, every step you take toward green fields and warm sun feels like victory. It's a victory you share, a story you pass on, and a memory that shapes who you become. If this journey through ice, mud, and green growth brought you a taste of medieval grit, then you've walked in the footsteps of those who lived, loved, and laughed despite the cold. So next time you complain about winter, remember the straw beds, the frozen water, the darkness that never slept. Remember how hope sprouted from the cold earth. And remember that when life feels harsh, a bit of stubborn heart and community warmth can carry you through.